Hi, I'm Brian Luce from the University of Arizona Fred Fox School of Music Recording Studio. These are the 2020 AMEA All-State Etudes for Flute. Now, to make that a successful performance and to make it easier to play, there are just a few things we want to do in our practice. The first thing is going to be being really careful about where we put our articulations as far as singles versus double tonguings. Definitely with this sort of Marziale playing, in order to create your definition of line, multiple articulation, double tonguing will be really important. So your tuku, tuku, tuku is going to be very helpful to create the definition of the line. The other thing that you can do with it is that when you multiply articulate, you can also keep the color going. So if you have some nice vibrato motions on those two octaves, you can kind of keep that vibrato going through the course of the double tonguing. So that when you arrive on the G, that then there's nice relaxed color. And that's going to be a really important part about those who are very successful in their auditions, because it always sounds very easy. And when vibrato is always present, it's one of the easiest sounding things you can do as a flute player. As far as the dynamic differences, like in the second bar, utilize your lower body, especially to help out with the dynamics. Whenever you're playing really nice and solidly loud, you can kind of stand up nice and tall, but when you play soft, just kind of bend your knees just a little bit. And in that way, you're going to have a little bit more power. You're simply using some lower body musculature. You don't have to do anything to your air. The embouchure is going to work. It's going to be a little bit stronger just simply by using your lower body. As we go on to the third bar, we have the same thing with those octaves. They're very clear, distinct octaves. And when you play the triplet, be very clear that it's a nice, even triplet before you play the eighth notes afterward. So that we have that very clear two-note slur that happens afterward. And then to make the dynamic change in the next bar, it's probably the easiest because the higher you play, the easier it is to play soft if your embouchure is nice and strong. So in your daily lip slur practice, which I'm sure everyone does, you hear the differences, the normal pressure to volume relationship that happens when you play. And in this case, when we play up there, the only difficulty we might encounter is being a little bit flat on the top F sharp and the A. And yes, I know that seems strange, but it happens all the time. So instead of having to strain by forcing your air or doing anything else, all we're going to do is we're going to switch over the fingerings. When you play the A's in the second large beat, beat 2, put your pinky over on the C sharp key on your foot joint. And then when you play the top F sharp, you could choose either to play the middle finger. Some people use that quite a bit to stabilize the top F sharp. Or you can actually reach over to the third. And then when you play the A's at the top, the last A's, they're going to be really nice and focused. So your embouchure will be able to create a nice sound. And then all you have to do is play the E that's afterward. The rest of the bars, as we go into the second system, into the third bar, the thing that will help a lot is something called anchor fingering. And that's where you're simply going to keep a finger down throughout a passage. And in this case, when you play that B dominant seventh in the third bar, it's much easier to execute that arpeggio, and the F sharp finger stays down the entire time. It won't affect the A, and it won't affect the A or the B, and it's already down for the B and the D sharp and the F sharp. So that'll help out a great deal. When you do get to the 4-2 bar at the end of the system, this is where, especially with the fortissimo, you want to use the middle finger F sharp. That'll be much easier to execute that top note. Now, the only thing that gets a little bit tricky probably is at the very, very end where we have to come off that low D tie. In order to execute low notes, all you have to do is simply stand up straight. So when we're in the second bar of the final system, all I have to do is just stand up really nice and tall between the two D octaves, and when I close my index finger, the low D is going to speak fairly easily. I don't even have to articulate. It'll just work out. And you could practice those slurs just simply by standing up taller. And I generally keep my knees bent all the time when I play anyway, but just simply by standing up taller, the low notes are going to come out very easily for you, so you don't have to really worry about that. And one thing I would recommend as far as the fortissimo at the very top G, I would actually play that with a coup, the reverse double tongue articulation, tuku tuku. I would play the coup for the top G because it's going to give you a nice, very round, very deep sound to it. And with the little bit of vibrato color you put on the end, it's going to sound really like a great finish to it. Because that vibration that we hear in the sound is going to echo throughout the room where you're auditioning, and that's what you want to have. You want to have a ringing sound that always goes on afterward. If you just play it as a clear note, it can sound kind of dead at the very, very end. It's anticlimactic. So that's where I strongly recommend using tu ku on the last G.